Hi, my name is Denise Corson, and I'm the program coordinator of the ATEL program, the Adaptive Telephone Equipment Loan Program. And we're also a partner agency with the Assistive Technology Access Partnership called ATAP. This partnership is designated as a statewide group of organizations, each with a targeted assistive technology focus, working together to improve access to and acquisition of assistive technologies for individuals with disabilities. This presentation is in collaboration with the Healthcare System Transformation Project on telecommunication devices that can be used in healthcare settings to communicate with individuals with hearing loss. There are 48 million Americans that have hearing loss, anywhere from profound to mild. What does it mean to be deaf, and how does it differ from being hard of hearing? This is a very important question, and it really depends on who you ask and what their perspective is. The medical community refers to deaf as a hearing loss so severe that there is very little function or no functional hearing left. Hard of hearing refers to a hearing loss where there may be enough residual hearing that an auditory device, such as a hearing aid or FM system, provides adequate assistance to process speech. The cultural definition is much different than the medical definition. According to the cultural definition, being deaf or hard of hearing has nothing to do with how much you can hear. It has to do with who do you identify with. Do you relate more closely to hearing people or deaf people? Culturally deaf individuals view themselves as a unique cultural and linguistic minority who use sign language as their primary language, where a person that's hard of hearing use speaking as their primary language. What types of telephones does someone use that has a hearing loss? If they identify as being hard of hearing and use their own voice, basically there are amplified phones and captioning phones. Amplified phones make the person's voice louder, that is talking to the hard of hearing person, and clearer. They are able to adjust for volume. Some go all the way up to 50 decibels, and then tone. And what tone is clarity, and adjusts for the person's frequency loss in their hearing. So some people have low frequency or high frequency hearing loss. These phones allow you to adjust so things sound clearer to you. Then there is a captioning phone, and that phone is for somebody that might say something to you like, I hear you, but I just don't know what you're saying. They've lost discrimination of speech and they need the words for backup. They might be able to hear some voices better than others, but they might not always be able to rely on what they're hearing. So basically they have the words on the screen if they're not able to process the speech that they're listening to. Those phones do require you to have the internet, and it uses a free service called Video Relay Service. So that is a free service that comes with the captioning phone. You might ask, how would I call somebody that is using a captioning telephone? So basically, you would do nothing differently than you would calling anybody else. You would just pick up the phone and call the person with the captioning phone or the amplified phone. There's no difference. The only difference is when you're speaking with somebody that's using a captioning phone, they're reading what you're saying to them. So if you ask them a question, give them a minute to read what you just said and let them respond. So as long as you're patient with responding and keeping the conversation a little slower, you can have a great effective communication. What type of telephone does someone use that is deaf? There are basically two types of telephones. One's a little old school that is still out there but not used so much, and one is more of what modern deaf individuals use. The old school is called a TTY or a TDD. They're both the same thing. They're basically like a typewriter that a person can type directly right from one device directly to another device. Or they can use video relay service to communicate with somebody that has a TTY or TDD. The other type of device or the other service is called video relay service. It requires a deaf individual to use American Sign Language to communicate with voice telephone users through video equipment, either a video relay app or there can be a special equipment put on their laptop so that they can communicate back and forth to individuals that are hearing. So you might ask yourself, how do you call someone that has a TTY? So there are two different ways to do that. If you have a TTY in your office or your home, you can actually call directly to the other phone number and you can connect through the telephone service. Most people that are hearing do not have a TTY, so that is not something that is widely seen anymore. Most people use video relay service. So to call somebody that had a TTY, they would give you the phone number in Rhode Island, 711. You would call that phone number, which would connect you to an operator. And then the operator would ask you what the deaf individual's phone number is, and then they would connect you. And whatever you would say to the operator, they type to the deaf individual. The deaf individual would type back to the operator what they want to say to you, and the operator would voice what they said back to you. And so basically it's almost like texting and having a person in the middle. Again, that is a little more old school, but again, it is still out there and you don't need any equipment to communicate with a deaf individual with a TTY. You just need to know how to contact relay service 711. How do you call someone that is using a video relay service? They actually would give you a phone number that is a direct connection. So you really wouldn't have to dial any special number. The deaf individual would give you a phone number, but when you call that phone number, an operator would pick up and then they would call the deaf individual so that they can relay what they're signing by voicing back to you. So you would call the phone number they gave you. The operator would pick up, you would give them that, they would say, please hold while we connect you to the deaf individual. And once the deaf individual is on the video relay service on the other side, they would sign through either their phone or a webcam to the operator. And then the operator would voice what the deaf individual is signing to you. And then you would speak back to the operator, and the operator again would continue to sign and speak back and forth to make sure the communication goes through. What mobile apps are there available to communicate with someone that is deaf or hard of hearing? So basically, if you are not the person that has the hearing loss, you don't need these apps. These are things that the deaf individual, the hard of hearing, would download to their phones to be able to communicate with you. So for a hard of hearing person, they have apps called Caption and Caption Mate. And basically they would download those to their phone and then they would just call your office, or you can call their phone through special phone numbers that they give you. There's also a texting app called Sprint IP Relay. And again, this would be somebody would download that is deaf or hard of hearing onto their telephone, and they would type to an operator who would call the business or your hospital and voice what's being said. So again, you don't need any special equipment. They're just using a different app to communicate with your office. The last group are called video relay apps. And again, these are things that would be on a deaf individual's phone, or in your office if you had an iPad or an iPhone that somebody could use that comes into your facility, that they can communicate by downloading those apps and going into their account, and then they can call people through those apps to any telephone that there's out there. So the deaf and hard of hearing person that uses sign language would just need to access that app to communicate with any phone number that they want to call. So how do you call someone that uses a mobile relay app? You call the number they give you. So there really is nothing to do other than they give you the number, and just be aware that there is a third party signing in between. So that you don't need to do anything other than be patient. And if you don't understand what's being said when you call the phone number and a relay operator answers, you can ask them any question you want or explain the service, and they'll give you an explanation on how things work. And another thing to mind in office settings is, does your office correspond through text messaging and patient portals? This is really a wonderful idea for offices to do when they're dealing with the deaf and hard of hearing, because they can read what's being said to them and there's no miscommunications. So that's really something, if your office hasn't already done, consider doing something like that to make it easier for communication with your deaf and hard of hearing um, patients and individuals. So again, I'd just like to tell everyone, communication is not about what is said or it's how it's said, but communication is about what is understood. And by recognizing the cultural communication preferences between the deaf and hard of hearing, embracing technology, the medical community and the deaf and hard of hearing community can have more effective communication. Effective communication is essential in any business, but even more so in healthcare. The effects of poor communication in healthcare can have extremely serious consequences. As with other businesses, poor communication decreases profits, but in healthcare communication, failure negatively affects patient outcomes. Poor communication can result in misdiagnoses and other medical mistakes that can easily lead to avoidable health complications and the death of patients. So thank you for your time. And I have a resource page as a last slide if you want further information on the topics I discussed. Thank you.